We return now to our top story, Russia's threats along NATO's eastern flank and Washington's mooted plans to pull troops out of the region. Joining me to break it all down is Diane Francis, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. Good evening, ma'am.
Hello.
So for a third time this week, Polish jets have intercepted Russian spy planes over the Baltic Sea. Is Vladimir Putin trying to make a mockery of Warsaw and of NATO's eastern flank?
I think he's creating mischief and headlines and trying to upset people. The war in Ukraine is not going well for him. And, so he's now nibbling at the edges of NATO, not quite attacking, but bugging everybody and sending balloons and all kinds of nonsense. It's dangerous. He's playing with fire. And I would hope that the NATO countries have warned him that if he has another jet or any drone enter anybody's airspace, they'll just shoot it. They'll give him a warning and shoot it down, as Turkey did a few years ago. So, and he's also, at the same time as he continues to do this, he just tested two of the worst nuclear weapons in history. This is a warning. This is designed to scare and rattle people. He's just really, I think he's at loose ends to look powerful in the light of the fact that his army is a complete failure.
So tell me, what role does America play in all of this? Because I guess if Russia viewed Washington as taking a hardline stance, as unequivocally backing Europe, it might be not so comfortable toying with the West.
Well, the Americans are in NATO, and they are, they have troops. They have troops in Poland, they have troops in Germany, they have troops in Latvia, and some troops in Romania and here and there. There's no question that, Trump has inherited support for NATO and Ukraine with his presidency. However, he's also at the same time been berating the Europeans for not pulling their weight to date, Poland accepted. So that's part of things that he does. It's not a withdrawal of support. And no, he's not given the Tomahawks, which Ukraine requested just yet. But, he's still hoping that his sanctions, pressure, and European mobilization, which hopefully is underway, are going to persuade Mr. Putin that he can't win and he should get to the negotiating table.
Well, you mentioned the troops there. We've heard that US troops are being resized in a number of different countries, obviously in Romania, but there's now reports of further cuts in the likes of Hungary and the likes of Slovakia and Bulgaria. Is it fair to say that Donald Trump and his White House is somewhat desperate to leave Europe to its own defences, to kind of get out of here?
No, not get out. I don't see that as happening. Although, the Russian disinformation machine is broadcasting, oh, they're taking troops out of Romania. Oh, they're giving up. Europe is toast. That's a lot of propaganda coming out of the Kremlin. I think we're talking 700 troops are downsized out of Romania, leaving 1,000 behind, a brigade and a base and all kinds of other things. Basically, this is a slow restructuring of the defense system in Europe to hand over as much as possible to the Europeans themselves, who, after all, should be 100% responsible for defending the European continent. And so, I don't see it as a withdrawal. I see it as a reworking. For instance, Romania it should become a hub. And, the countries around Romania, like Greece and Italy and Slovakia, Hungary, and so on, should be fortifying and militarizing the Romanian hub to protect the Black Sea, which they also all rely on. And so, there's kind of, Europe has to get its act together. And so I don't see it as a scary thing. And also in September, Trump said in Poland that they were going to deploy more troops in Poland. So there's no overall withdrawal. There's none of that.
And the Pentagon has so far also told us, and I quote, that this is not an American withdrawal from Europe or a signal of lessened commitment to NATO in Article 5. But What message do you think this sends to European leaders? I mean, how do you think European leaders will be seeing this behind closed doors? For example, I spoke to the Foreign Minister of Romania, Oana Tsoiu, last night, and she told me, look, we respect the decision, but we're not celebrating it.
Well, of course not. It means they're going to have to get soldiers in place and pay the cost themselves and take responsibility for it, maybe even more responsibility for it. Europe is still trying to get its act together. It hasn't. It's not there yet, and Trump is just doing gradually what is going to happen eventually anyway, and that is hopefully Europe will be freestanding. Ukraine will be part of Europe. Russia will be defeated or stopped, and that sort of thing. What Trump has also done, though, is that in response to Putin's detonation of two horrible nuclear devices, is that he has also talked about going back to testing nuclear weapons. That is putting Putin on notice that you can scare everybody all you want. You don't scare us, and we're a big nuclear power as well. So it's kind of this is kind of another pressure point to try and get him to stop.
How telling will the Tomahawks be in terms of America's support for Ukraine? You mentioned the Tomahawks earlier. We're hearing tonight that the Pentagon has given the White House the green light to send the long-range missiles to Ukraine. Of course, the decision now lies with Donald Trump. Do you see that coming anytime soon?
Well, he wants it known that he's got the button, that he can push that button. That he has permission, and he's ready to use give the Tomahawks to and escalate the war that Ukraine can wage against inside Russia, and so that gives him leverage in talks going forward. It's more pressure. So is the promise that he's going to do nuclear testing, and all of that. So the signs are there, but I think the most incredible development this week geopolitically is the truce that the United States reached with China. This is enormous. This is enormously damaging to Putin because it isolates Putin. China and the US are economic partners who are integrating more than ever. He's very dependent on China. China's priority now is going to be to get the tariff thing organized, to become more prosperous, and to stay friends with the United States. Putin is getting isolated. That is a huge blow.
Let's talk about that meeting between President Trump and Xi Jinping, because some are saying, look, they did talk about Ukraine for some time, but at the end of the day, China appears to be firmly in Russia's court. We spoke to exiled Russian opposition leader Garry Kasparov. He told us a few days ago that Beijing is banking on Moscow's war. I mean, do you see it in that way? Did President Trump miss his chance to convince Xi? Was he putting this trade war above all else? Or were there, in your view, was there tangible progress made effectively on Ukraine?
Ukraine wasn't discussed at the table, and neither was Russia. But what I'm saying is that the two biggest economic players in the history of the world have agreed to drop their spat over tariffs on both sides and to do more business together, which means they'll integrate more. And to also, and now, at the same time, that's the geopolitical development that's happened that I think is enormously dangerous and negative for Putin. But that doesn't mean that China isn't going to continue to do business with Russia. It sells a lot of stuff to Russia. Russia doesn't make cars and laptops. China does. And Russia needs customers for its oil, and China's its biggest customer. So you think about this. You've got China now cozying up with the Americans. China, yes, is dependent on Russia, but Russia's more dependent on China than the other way around. And so China now has a lot of leverage in the hopes of trying to get Putin to stop. And they're not going to necessarily go public politically with this, but economically now, the stage is set. Russia's isolated. And it's isolated geoeconomically, and also that pivot means a geopolitical pivot.
Now, we're running out of time, but lastly, do you think that means that this proposed Budapest meeting falling through between Trump and Putin matters? Because we're hearing that the Kremlin repeated its demands that Ukraine give up large parts of its territory, cut its troops, scrap plans to join NATO, and the US said, look, it seems like there's no desire to compromise. Are we any closer to peace?
There's no such thing as peace until Putin agrees to stop. And he will not stop until he's defeated. And so what he's done yet again is demonstrate, and juxtaposed with the Chinese deal, look how irrational and unreasonable he is. China is a country run by a large Politburo who are businessmen and technocrats. They want to make money, not war. And then you've got the irrational maniac in Moscow to deal with. The contrast couldn't be greater, and it diminishes Putin's importance and influence around the world. And it's got to start to make some of the Russian people behind him or underneath him think twice about the fact of what's going to happen next. He can't win and he won't lose, but he's got to be defeated. And he will be economically first, probably.
Diane Francis, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council, thank you as always for your time.
You're welcome.
And that's all for World News tonight. Do stay with us here on TVP World for more. I'm Aaron Darman. Good night.